Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's not dev time, but it is time to show off a thing. Yeah. Figured I should, I figured that eventually I should do this, so now's as good a time as any, Is that kind of thing. Um, Also, should I put this? The stream is going to be shorter today. That I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. Um, but yeah, the stream's not going to be as long today because I have a bunch of other stuff I need to get done IRL. Um, mostly just some chores, but there's there's another thing that I probably wouldn't work on stream that I need to work on, and it's not like a surprise thing. It's just something for some friends of mine. And so yeah, I'm going to be working on that later today. But in the meantime, I wanted to stream something, both to kind of just get back into the habit of streaming weekly, but also just just because it's fun, and to keep you guys entertained, to keep that content coming, or going rather. But yeah, fun stuff is in store for us today. So, what exactly is this? What are we doing? What are we playing? What's going on? So, there's a lot of ways that I can go about explaining this, but basically, this is a card game that I have had in the works for quite some time now. And when I say that, I mean the original concept for this card game and the original version of it was made back when I was in high school. Now, that was a long time ago. That was almost an entire decade ago. Now, I'm not going to say that I have been working on it ever since then, but it has been something that I have worked on kind of off and on at times, but only recently in the past year or two. Hey, Shulima! Good to see you, bud. Glad to see you in the stream. Yeah, as the title suggests, I have made a card game and I am showing it off today. I was actually just explaining how where this originally came about. But yeah, in the past 2 years, I have more seriously actually started developing it. And I'm really excited to show it off. It's not finished yet. By golly, it is not finished yet. While I would like to say that the rules are good, nice and tight, I don't know for sure yet. I'm pretty sure that they're pretty watertight, but there's a lot of things that could change. But the general idea is definitely good to go. But yeah, there might be some things that I take out or change or whatever. Another thing that you'll notice once we get into actually seeing all these cards and stuff is that the art is also not finished at all. It is barely there. I literally, just to show it real quick, I took this image of Hydra and just put it on every single card. The actual layout of all the numbers and stuff, that all is fine. I mean, it does need to be cleaned up, but it's functional. So there's that. But otherwise, the rules are basically done. There are some card changes that I've made that I need to make some changes to. I need to make some new cards and delete some old ones and change some other ones, just because there are some rule changes that I've made that would affect that. But otherwise, this game is pretty much done otherwise. And with that being said, once I have all of the cards actually like, so you made this card game? I did indeed do. I'm quite proud of it. Something I've had in the works for quite some time, and it's one of the projects I've had kind of been making in the background for a while, and I'm proud that I can actually finally show it off to you guys. So yeah, so with all that vague lollygagging all around, let's actually dig into what this card game is. And off to my side, I actually have my rule book and list of rules and everything, just so I can reference it, because I can't even remember most of the rules of this game. Well, I remember most of them, just not all of them at once. Not to mention that there are some that I changed somewhat recently, so, you know. Okay, so, the name of this game, as of right now at least, is Elementals the Living Stones. And I think I have that in the description, but yeah, Elementals the Living Stones. And there are two big, like, concepts for this game. The first one, well, okay, there's a few. There's a few things with this game. Oh, I forgot I need to do. Oh well. So the first one is that you might see that there's all this stuff down here, and then there's a bunch of blank spaces, and then there's a mirrored version of that original area. Well, these two areas, both up here and down here, are the player areas. This is where you will be messing with most of your cards and kind of preparing them, and it's also like where the deck is, along with a bunch of other stuff that I'll get into later. This 5x5 grid here is the battlefield. And what that means is throughout the game you will have your creature cards and stuff, and they will be moving around this battlefield like as if it was like a chess game or something, or if you've ever played the Fire Emblem series, it's kind of like that, except everybody only moves like one space at a time, but still. And what's cool is that you might have noticed that the backs of these cards, I'll kind of zoom in here, kind of look like they're made out of stone, and that is extremely intentional, as part of the reason why this game is called The Living Stones, but I'll get into that mechanic later. But the basic idea is that throughout the game you will be placing down cards in various places, and then you will be able to move your cards on the spaces that you've already put down. Have over 500 hours on the 3DS Fire Emblem games. Oh my goodness, dude. That's insane. Not even I've put in that much. They are good games, though. I will admit, the 3DS ones especially. Well, the first one. But yeah, they're quite good. They're really fun. But yeah, so these the stones that you put down, you can move your creatures around on them, and then yeah, you can attack other creatures. Like if this guy's coming up here and then I'm here, I can be like, bam, I attack you, and then he gets attacked and stuff. Just gonna group these back up. Yeah, making this into Tabletop Simulator, I've also forced myself to learn how to use Tabletop Simulator. But yeah, so that's one of the main hooks, is like you forge out your own battlefield, and then you move your creatures around to battle and stuff. The second mechanic that I'm going to show off is what do I call it? Purification level, I believe is what I call it. Now, on each card, you'll notice a few things, obviously. Like there's the name in the center, and then there's some numbers and symbols around. In particular, there are a bunch of numbers on the border here, labeled 0 through 8. That is turn markers. And what that means is, so for instance, this guy, the blue number in the corner here is the creature's purification level, right? And so what that means is that he has to be he has to purify himself basically for 2 whole turns before he is able to come out. Now, this process can be quickened by certain things that I'll get into later, but the general idea is he won't be able to come out for 2 turns. And so what you can do is that you can rotate the card to have the 2 indicator facing forwards. And then every time that he's purified, wrong way, boop, and then boop. And now he's facing forwards because it is facing the 0. The reason why the 8 is also there is because it can go up to 8, so I just made it so that the 8 and the 0 are the same. And then it goes 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then back to 0. And then they can move out onto the battlefield and do various things. So that's fun. So yeah, so there's that, and then the battlefield. And now for the main mechanic of the game, which is the living stones. And this concept is a little difficult to wrap. Gotta go eat lunch. I'll be back in a few. That's totally fine, dude. I'm gonna just keep on going. So the concept of the living stones is probably the hardest thing to wrap your mind around. But once you understand it, it is really interesting, unique, and just very interesting in general, in general. So the living stone mechanic basically works like this. Each and every stat within the game has an associated value. Sorry about that. I was trying to switch over to a different document so I can reference this. No. Wait, where did that... Sorry. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, each stat within the game has an associated value. Now, this is true for every game. You have a certain amount of health, you can draw a certain amount of cards, just stuff like that. The stuff that everybody knows. And one of the goals that I had with making this game was that when you play it, you do not need any trackers of any kind. You don't need, like for instance, a very popular trading card game, Magic the Gathering. Usually what people do is that they get like a d20 dice or some counter on their phone or just a simple calculator or something. And then they keep track of that number throughout the game using that thing. My goal within making this game was to make a trading card like game where no amount of trackers or keeping too many numbers in your head is needed. That's part of the reason why I had these turn markers around it. Because instead of having to put like tokens onto it to be like, okay, he's been here for 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns. Let me change in these 5 1s for a 5, and so on and so forth. Instead of doing that, I decided to have the corners and edges be the thing that indicates how many steps of purification they've gone through. In addition to that, in this game, creatures do not have health, they have defense. And the basic idea with that is, in order, for instance, this creature has 1 attack, indicated by this red 1 over here, and they have 3 defense, indicated by this green 3 over here in this corner. And the final corner is just what faction they're in, this one being Earth, but I'll get to that later. Excuse me. So basically, the idea is if this creature takes 3 or more damage within a single turn, then they are destroyed. However, if they do not take 3 or more damage, then their health or defense is still at 3 next turn. The basic idea being if you can't kill a creature in a single turn, then you cannot kill that creature with that current setup. So let's say I have this guy here, and then he's being attacked by this guy here. So this guy has 1 attack. He'll attack. He takes 1 damage, so his defense is now at 2. Well, the turn ends. Well, he's not dead, so next turn his defense is back up to 3. However, if I had more people, say like this blue slime and this giver of solidarity apparently, and let's say they were all here, they each have an attack of 1. Well, on your turn, I could be like, or on the opponent's turn, they can be like, okay, I'll have this guy attack you, I'll have this guy attack you, and I'll have this guy attack you. That's a total of 3 damage, and therefore this guy is destroyed, and I'll put him over here. And yeah, so that's an interesting thing. But yeah, back to the main thing that I was talking about, being the living stones. So in this game, there are 4 types of living stones, each associated with a specific name. You can see 3 of those here already, being mind, heart, and soul. And I'll get to what those are, but then the 4th one is also body. So body, heart, mind, and soul. You might recognize that from a variety of things. First off, the easiest one to understand is body. I'm trying to think. Yeah, okay. So with body, it is the battlefield. Whenever you create a body living stone card, which I'll get to how you do that in a minute, you put it down onto the battlefield in this grid format, and it creates the battlefield that you attack on and stuff. So that's very important. Now you may have noticed that down here there are certain cards that have more than 1 star on the back, and if we go down even further, you'd actually find, let me see here, that there are even more. For instance, there are cards with 4 on them, and if I can find it, there are cards with 3 on them. So let me just get 1 of each here. And then put all these back together. There we go. Okay, so yeah, there are 4 different values, and these values are associated with the rarity and power of the associated card. For instance, as you can see, the 1 star is associated with the creatures that have 1 purification level. This is also true for the creatures that have 2 purification levels, or a purification level of 2, rather. Basically, the 1 star is the 1 and 2s, the 2 star is the 3 and 4s, the 3 stars is the 5 and 6, and then the 4 star is the 7 and 8. Now, the rarity of these is also fairly simple. It's the reverse of its value, which sounds complicated, but basically there are 4 of the 1 stars, 3 of the 2 stars, 2 of the 3 stars, and 1 of each of the 4 stars. So yeah, pretty simple stuff. Now, the values of these have an effect on each of the living stones, but I'll get to what each of them does later. For now, all that you need to understand with body is that it creates the battlefield. Second, and this one is also pretty easy to understand, is the heart living stones. Now, I had mentioned that I had mentioned before that like Magic the Gathering, you have to get out like a calculator or something or a D20 in order to keep track of your life points. In this game, that is not the case. Your life points are how many cards you have in the heart pile. With one exception that I'll get to later, but the basic idea is however many cards you have in this pile here is your current life total. Which means whenever you take damage, you will draw a card from this pile, and actually at that point you would discard it over here. But yeah, I'll get to what that means later. So yeah, your health points are your heart living stones. Next up, this one is decently easy to understand. It's the last one that I'm saving for is the most difficult. But this one is mind. Now let me make sure that I get this right. Okay, yeah. So in this game, you do not have a hand limit. However, the amount of cards that you can draw each turn is equal to how many cards you have in your mind pile. Put just fairly and simply. If you have 5 cards in the pile, then you can draw 5 cards. If you have 10 cards in the pile, then you can draw 10 cards. And so on and so forth. And it's really interesting because, like, you know, throughout the game, you can invest into creating mind living stones, and then because you do so, then you can draw more cards. However, if you invest too much into mind, then say you won't have a lot of health, or your battlefield will be really tiny, and you won't be able to put out a lot of creatures and stuff like that. So yeah, that's one big thing about the living stone system, is that every time that you invest into one of these stats, into one of these living stones, you are not permanently, but you are using one of your potential creatures. And the higher of a rank of a creature you use, say 2, 3, or 4, the more useful that living stone is to you, but you also miss out on the chance of using that living stone in battle. So there's this really interesting give and take with that. All right, the final system. And by the way, I should mention, this is just showing everything off. I don't expect everybody to understand all of this. I'm not the best at explaining things. I will make like a proper how to play video at some point. That's just going over like, hey, this is this thing, this is this thing, this is how this works, and just going through everything. But for now, I'm kind of just showing it off, if that makes sense. So the last living stone is basically everything else that is on this board here, this 3x3 area and this soul pile. So the soul pile has to do with the purification process and how quickly a creature can be purified. Now, the basic idea is every time that you take your turn, you will draw a certain amount of cards into your hand, like I am doing so here. And I'm just ignoring the values right now. But after I draw them, I will then place them into one of my 3 purification zones. These 2 spaces are Purification Zone 1, these 2 are Purification Zone 2, and this is Purification Zone 3. Now you may have noticed that underneath these are purifiers with the same label, Purifier 1, 2, and 3. That's important. Now on your turn, and sure, I'll use this guy as an example. I'll draw a few more cards. Just because I want a bit more variety in here. Yeah, here we go. I forgot I can hold down Alt to like make them bigger. Okay, and I'll put you there. Now, one thing that's nice is that, well, no, I'll get to that later. I know I've said that a lot, but I'm trying not to overwhelm you guys too much. Um, so this destroyer of lands right here, he has a purification level of 7, right? Which means when I put him down, I will set him here to the 7-pointer facing forwards. The river hopper here also has a purification level of 2, so I'll set his 2 forwards. Now, normally on your turn, and this is true for every turn, you get 1 free purification. I forget how I named that exactly, but basically you get to purify 1 creature for free, I think. Yes. Yeah, once per turn, a player can always draw 1 card and purify 1 single creature. So, like, I could just first turn, okay, purify this down to 6. Next turn, 5. Next turn, 4, 3, 2, 1. But that obviously will take, 7 turns, and that's only for this 1 creature. If I wanted to get both out, that would be 9 turns. Hey, Shulima, welcome back. You missed a little bit, but I'm currently explaining what I call the living stone system, and I'm going over the soul living stone. There's 4 different kinds: body, heart, mind, and soul, and I'm going over soul right now. I apologize if you don't quite understand everything, but I'm going to just keep on going because I just want to get this all out there, and the stream isn't going to be too long anyway. But yeah, welcome back. So this guy, purification level 7, it would take 7 turns for him to come out, and this guy would take 2 more turns for him to come out. So what can we do to speed up that process? Well, that is where the purifier piles come in. And the basic idea is that for every card that you have in this pile, so like right now I have 4 cards in this pile, every turn you will purify the creatures in that zone by that much. And let me just make sure that I'm getting that correctly. Yes, that is correct. So I have 4 cards in this pile right now. Therefore, every turn I will purify this creature by 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I don't have anything in Purifier 2, so I'll just use my 1 Purify, like my 1 free Purify to just get this guy down to 1. And yeah, and I can have multiple cards in here. I can have this guy here, and then he would also be purified by 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, hey, he was fully purified this turn. Now he gets to move out onto the battlefield. So that's fun. Now, obviously, in the normal game, you would need to have a body living stone here in order for him to move out. But for the purposes of this tutorial, or just showing off and stuff, I'm not going to bother following that. Now, you may be wondering, what is the purpose of the soul pile here if the purifiers are already doing all the work? It doesn't seem like the soul pile does really do anything. That is true. However, basically, there will be times where you will have to destroy entire piles of purifiers, and you will need something to replace them with. And oftentimes, it's not efficient for you to just do it directly from your hand of cards. So you have this pile here to kind of store up like backup stuff. So you make a lot of soul, and then when one of your things are gone, you can take from it and put it in the new pile. Or the old pile that was just destroyed or whatever. So yeah, that's that. And that's basically oh, right. It's not the whole living stone system because I have not explained values. So, first I'm going to get these back to where they were. Okay. So there are 4 different values of cards, or specifically living stones in this game, being 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are associated with the rarity of the cards, as I mentioned. But yeah. Now, each living stone, be it body, mind, heart, and soul, the value of the card that you put in there, or at least the card that's on the top of the pile, matters. To start, body living stone. As I mentioned before, body living stone is the thing that allows creatures to move on the battlefield. If you do not have a body living stone card on a space, a creature cannot move to that space. Additionally, the value, I believe I called it like the, what did I call it actually? I forget. I have it written down somewhere. Right, it's level of purity. Hey, Jazz, what up, dude? Glad that you could make it to the stream. But I apologize that you've probably missed a lot, or maybe you've seen a bit, I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and just keep on explaining, just because I would just want to get this out here and I don't want to re-explain everything. Plus, you can watch it back. Plus, I'm going to make a proper how to play video at some point. This is just me showing everything off. And this is by no means finished. It's just in a state that I can play. But yeah, anyway, so for the body living stones, they each have obviously the living stones have values, but for body living stones, they determine how many actions that creature can do, the creature that is on it. So for instance, this river hopper here, he is on a level 3. That means that he can use 3 actions that turn. Now, an action is basically 2 things. It's either move 1 space or attack. Well, technically there's a third option, and that's use your ability. Every creature has a unique ability associated with it, and each ability costs a certain amount of actions to do. So for instance, if this guy's action costs like 2 actions, for instance, and he was on a 1 star at the start of his turn, he would not be able to use his ability because it costs 2 actions. So in this exact setup right here, I would use one of his actions to move onto the 2 star over here, or the living stone with 2 levels of purity, or LP, or I'll just call it 2 star for now. And then on the next turn, I would be able to use his ability, but then I wouldn't be able to move. However, if I was on the 3 star, I would be able to use his ability, and I would be able to move once. Additionally, if I was on the 4 star, while I could like use his ability and then move twice, or move once, use his ability and then move once again, I could also theoretically use his ability twice in 1 turn without moving. And that's kind of the power of the values. Now, of course, because the value determines their rarity, there are only, I think it's like, there are only 6 cards in the deck of 60 cards that have 4 stars on them. Meaning, if you use a 4 star as a body LS, a body living stone, then that is 1 out of your 6. So yeah, use them wisely. Next up, I'll explain the value, how the values affect heart. Now, I've mentioned before how heart is basically how much health you have as a player. So like I'll take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards here and just put this one on top. Ooh. Grab the whole deck. Okay, so in this current state of the game, there are 6 cards in this pile. What that means is that I, as a player, have 6 health. Now, technically speaking, the way that it officially works, is that I have 6 health plus like 1, I'm going to call it like a soul HP or something. I don't really know what to call it, but the basic idea is this is your protection. If you don't have any protection, say you don't have any cards in heart, then the next point of damage that you take makes you lose the game immediately. It basically kills you. However, you will most likely have stuff in here. Now, at the start of the game, the only thing that you will have is your main deck. You will not have any cards out on the field when you start the game, which means that you need to put stuff into heart as soon as possible before your opponent can attack you. Because if they attack you when you still have 0 hit points, then you lose the game immediately. So it's very useful to invest into heart. But let me explain what the values do. So yes, the amount of cards that you have in here is the amount of damage that you can take. However, the value determines basically the defense of your health, if that makes any sense. So right now, in order for somebody to start damaging me, they will have to do 1 damage. And then after that 1 damage, for each damage they do on top of that, I will destroy one of these cards, regardless of its value. So you only have to worry about the top card's value. So in this case, let's say I am about to take like 4 damage or something. So 4 damage is enough to destroy the top card, so then I will take my 4 damage. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I now have 2 health left. However, this card is a 2-star. That means if I were to take, like, say next turn I destroyed a bunch of his creatures, and now he only attacks me with, like, 1 damage or something. In that case, I would not destroy any of these cards, because it is not enough to destroy the top card. So yeah, and then what that means is, for instance, if there was a 4-star on top, the opponent would have to do at least 4 damage in order to start damaging me. In this case specifically, if he were to do, say, 5 damage, then 5 damage is enough to break through this. So then I would take, this card would take 4 of it, and then this one would take the next, or the 5. Or it would take the next point of damage, which would total up to 5. So 4 and then 5. Yeah. I know what I'm talking about. I don't know if you guys do, but I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's useful to do just for like simple defense. One thing, and I might change exactly what that value does, because as you can see with this creature, its attack is 16. I forgot. Scratch that. That doesn't matter. The amount of damage that a creature can do to the player is based off of its star value. So even though this creature has 16 attack, if it were to attack me directly, it would only do 4 damage. I'll get to how exactly they attack you in a minute. Next off, Mind. We get a 1-star again, if I can find one. There we go. Okay. So, as I had mentioned before, Mind is basically how many cards you draw each turn, as I had mentioned before. So if I have, 5 cards in here, then every turn I will draw 5 cards to use. However, there is a bit of a catch with that I had not mentioned before. And that is the top card of your pile, no matter how many cards are in your deck. So let's say I have this setup right here. There are 7 cards in this pile. So I would be able to draw 7 cards. However, I can only draw cards equal to or less than the star value of the top card. Now what that means, especially in this case, is that I look at this and be like, okay, I have 7 cards in here, but I can only draw 1 stars. So then every card from here, I would discard, 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 and just keep on going through the deck. Now, here we go. There's a 1-star. So there's 1 card that I draw. Oops. 1 card, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, can't do that. There's another one. Let's see, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then that's how many cards I now have in my hand. Or rather, that's how many cards I drew. Let me here, I'm going to take these cards back. Group them together and put them back into the deck. Now, this is now that was kind of an obvious effect, but I also have not shuffled the deck at all, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now if I were to have the same setup, it'd be a little more well balanced in terms of what I can and can't draw. Oop, wrong one. There we go. Still getting used to the controls of Tabletop Simulator. So basically what this means is that, yes, you want a lot of cards in mind. It's always a good idea to have a bunch of cards in mind, because then you can draw more cards, create more living stones, etc., etc. However, if the top card is not a high rank, then you can't draw good cards. However, if you put on, say I get a 4-star somehow, and then I put it on top, well, that's great. I can now draw every card in the game, but I can only draw 8 of them. And if I want to draw any more, I have to put a card on top of there. I also just realized a mistake that I made with making the rules for this, but I'm going to keep what I just said as the truth, because that is a much more interesting system than what I have had previously. So yeah, so that's mine. And yet, so yeah, you have to be careful about what your top card is. And if you want to change it or whatever, then you're going to have to do something else with it. Now, I will say, and this is true for any of the living stones, there is a way to destroy the cards. For heart, it's a bit obvious because it's your health. So whenever you take damage, you take that many cards and you discard them and stuff. But for mind, let me make sure I get this right. Okay, so I had mentioned before how if you have 1 star, then you are not allowed to draw the next, you're not allowed to draw cards higher than 1 star. That isn't technically true. Turns out you are allowed to draw this card, but if you do so, you have to destroy the amount of mind cards equal to its value. So say I have 7 cards in mind right now, and I see this 4-star, and I'm like, ooh, I really want that 4-star. What I would do then is to draw it, instead of just counting it as one of the 7, I would destroy 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. And actually, in this setup, I would not take it from the top. So I think how I would do this is, obviously when you have them in hand, you could just draw from the bottom of the deck. But in Tabletop Simulator, that's not as easy to do. So in this case, I'm going to just flip the entire thing and go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'll put those into the discard pile. Flip that back over. Now that I've destroyed those 4, I can draw that card. But now I only have 3 left. So then I can only draw 3 more cards. Oh man, I really want that 2-star as well. So I'll destroy 2 more of these. Now obviously this is a very bad play. And then, yep, I get to draw that card. Now, I'm trying to think. The way that... I'm trying to think on how you would calculate it all. Like, how would you... Okay, so... Sorry, this is something that I actually haven't come across yet in thinking about the rules and stuff. So, say I want to get this 4-star, then I would destroy 4 cards from mind. But then would it count also for drawing 1? No. Okay, here's what I'll say. Well, it doesn't quite work. Okay. How about this? How about this? Because I want this to work, and I'll have it as an example. I want the 4-star. I destroy 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Discard those. Flip this back over. I draw the card. Now, I have 3 cards left. So then I draw my 1. So now the value down here is 2 because I drew 1. And then I want the 2-star. So then I will destroy 2 more cards. And I'll draw it. Now, because I already drew 1 card without destroying any, and there's only 1 card left in the mind pile, I cannot draw anymore because I have drawn the amount normally equal to how many cards are in the mind pile. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think it's a little weird and I might change it, but I'll go with that for now. Anyway, moving on. Soul. Soul is one that was a little more interesting in terms of how everything actually works. So, as I had mentioned before, the basic idea is that each card has a purification level, indicated by the number in the blue corner here. In this case, this creature has a purification level of 4. How I would indicate that is by rotating the card so that the 4 number is facing forwards. Now, normally, I can only purify each creature, one creature once per turn. So, say this guy was at 2, this guy was at 4. In order to fully purify each of them so that they can be moved out onto the battlefield, it would take 6 whole turns. Now, that's a lot. Now, the way to speed that up is with the purifiers, in that however many cards you have in each purifier area, purifier pile, affects how quickly you purify each creature in a purification zone. I know I said purify a lot there, but it makes sense. So there's only 1 card in here. This guy gets purified by 1. There is 3 cards in this pile. This guy gets purified by 3. He only needs 2 though, so he would be able to move out on that turn. I'm actually going to switch these guys around for a better example. However, let's switch some things around here. So, in this case, let's say I actually have this card in my hand here, and this card, for instance, just cause. Now, with this current setup, I have 1 3-star, and then 6 cards with a 2-star on top, and then 3 cards with a 1-star on top. You can only purify creatures using these purifiers if the top card is equal to or less than, no, if the purifier is equal to or more than the value of the creature card you want to purify. So in this instance, I would not be able to place this 2-star card into this zone because there is a 1 star on the top of this pile. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to put it there. I mean, I could, but I wouldn't be able to purify it just yet. I would have to somehow draw a card and that had a 2 or higher, and then put it onto the top there. Then I would be able to adjust that. So from that, so I would only be able to purify them like in this one or this one, however I so choose. Let me think. Yes, but similar to Mind, you are technically still allowed to purify this creature, even if it's in a zone that you cannot currently purify. However, if you do, so like let's say this guy is set to 4 and I'm like, no, I really want to purify this creature. So I take however many cards I have in here, and it's 3. I purify them by 3, and then I destroy this entire pile of purifiers. Basically saying, hey, yeah, you can put out that really high level creature, or at least purify it, but it's going to cost you a lot. So get the right thing first, and then maybe we'll talk, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's the basic idea with that. You can have multiple or multiple creatures in a zone, of course, up to 2. There's the battlefield. You move around and attack. I'll go ahead and explain what the various discard piles are. Just because I probably should do that anyway. Just gonna gather everything up here. There we go. Oops. Wait, why are there 59 cards? Oh, I have one in my hand. There we go. Okay. So, the different discard piles. You'll see that there is a main discard pile over here, and then there is a living stone discard pile over there. The basic idea is that during the battle phase, like when you're attacking creatures and when they're attacking you and so on and so forth, creatures will inevitably die, of course. When they do, they will get put into the living stone discard pile. And then, at the end of each person's turn, if there are any cards in the living stone discard pile, you will take them and individually transform them into whatever living stone you like. So in this case, I'll be like, okay, I want 1 in heart, I'll put 1 in soul, and I'll put up a body card right there. In addition to that, at the end of your turn, if you have any cards left in your hand, you may transform any of these cards into a living stone. I think... Well, it wouldn't matter anyway. Okay. So yeah, so like say it's the end of my turn and I'm like, okay, I'll end my turn or go into what I'm calling the restoration phase. And I'll be like, okay, I'm going to take this one and put it into mind. I'll take this one and put it into heart, and then that one I'll put into soul. And I'll keep this card in my hand for next turn. Pretty simple stuff. Now, the main discard pile, you've seen me use it a couple of times. With, for instance, whenever you can't draw a certain card, I'll put it in there. That is normal. However, in addition, anytime a living stone, being it body, heart, mind, or soul, when they are destroyed, that is when you put them into the main discard. Now, at the once again, at the end of each of your turn, or at the end of each turn, if there are any cards left in the main discard pile, you will take them and you will put them at the bottom. Ooh, Well, if it would let me. Okay, maybe, you know what I'll just do. You put it at the bottom of the deck. That's the idea. So yeah. So in this way, there is this cycle that happens throughout the game where you will draw cards and put them into your hand as you do. Let's say I just draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Oop. There we go. You put cards into your hand, you put them onto purification zones, you purify them all the way, you put them out onto the battlefield. And obviously there would be body living stones here, whatever. They do their thing, they fight, and they die. After they die, they get turned into living stones, however you wish. But then eventually, for whatever reason, you might want to destroy that living stone, or if they're in heart, whenever you take damage, it'll happen. So you'll take that, and then you put it back into your main discard, and then they go back into the bottom of your main deck. And so the cycle starts again. Now, additionally, you don't have to create a creature to do that. You can just do it directly from your hand, of course. And then do that and that and that and whatever. But the idea is that creatures will, like every card in the game, will go from being in the deck to being either a creature or just in your hand or whatever, to being a living stone and then back into the deck. And it's this constant cycle that's always going around and around and around, which I find to be really cool. So in a lot of trading card games, what ends up happening is that if you run out of cards to draw from, then that's just the end of the game right there. Or it triggers like an end game state, or whatever. Not so in this game. Every card always has an important use. Like, even if it's in the main deck, then it's just a part of your main deck and you have a main deck. Because if you don't have any cards in your main deck, you are actually forced to draw from your heart pile, meaning you are forced to damage yourself if you don't have any cards to draw from. So you are encouraged to take advantage of this cycle. In addition, like the living stone system, yes, you want to invest a lot into mind. Yes, you want to invest a lot into soul. Yes, you want to invest a lot into heart, but you can't invest into any single one too heavily or with too good of creatures. Because if you do, then you either won't have a lot of cards left in your deck to draw from, or you won't have very good creatures to put out to battle. And because of that, there's always this constant balance that you have to find and draw from and stuff. And it creates this idea that you can play however you want. Sure, you could just have one heart card the entire game and just be that risky. Because whenever you lose all of the cards in heart, you technically can't take any more damage that turn, or I forget exactly how I have it, but what actually I'm gonna see what it's supposed to be. Okay, when a play right, okay, I forgot about that system. When a player is taking damage and they reach the point of having 0 heart living stones. So like, let's say I've reached this point right now. They do not die instantly, even if more damage is incoming. Instead, once the player has reached 0 heart living stones, they destroy each and every creature that they own on the battlefield immediately and transform them all into heart. Whether then the player dies or not All of these cards are then destroyed and placed at the bottom of the main deck at the end of the player's turn. So basically, the idea is you destroy all of your creatures that are currently on the battlefield, and then you keep on taking the damage. Basically, if you run out of HP down here, then as long as you have enough creatures, then you can still survive. So let's say in this case, you had just your 1 here, and there's 4 damage incoming. Well, 1 is enough to destroy this top card, so it's destroyed. Oh no, I have 0 left. I am forced to destroy all of my creatures and put them here. Well then, there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. At which point... Yeah, because the player has... each player has a single HP, so if the player is dealt any damage when they have 0 heart, then they lose. So at this point, I would actually still be safe, but say if there was 1 single damage incoming at this point, and I had 0 creatures on the field, then you're donezo. So yeah, there's the whole cycle bit, the battlefield, and just everything about this is just really neat to me, and I'm very proud of it. Anyway, there's one last system that I haven't quite explained yet, mainly because it's not fully finished or fleshed out yet, but that is these cards, the character cards. Now, the thing with these, and the art on them or whatever isn't done yet, but the idea is that every faction, of which there are actually quite a few, but I'll get to that later, out of each faction, there's 1 card that will be separated from the deck at the start of the game. And you will choose 1 from all the factions that you have. So let's say I choose the character for water, the water sprite in this case. The names will definitely change later. Now, the only person that can read these cards is myself at the moment, because I decided, oh, hey, let's make it so that there's a bunch of icons on there so it's easier to read. But then it turns out that making a bunch of icons that nobody understands makes it harder to read. So now I'm the only one that understands them. And I will obviously change that. But basically what this is saying is this card, while it is alive, or in this case, while it is a character card, every other faction gets +1 movement, meaning it can move 1 more space whenever it decides to move. However, water creatures get the movement ability of hop, which is basically they are allowed to jump over 1 space and onto another space. And when they hop over, and then this last line here is basically whenever they hop over an opposing creature, then that opposing creature takes 1 damage. And each one has a interesting thing. Like the Earth one is like every other faction gets +1 defense, and Earth creatures get a movement ability. If there is an opposing creature next to you, you can move onto that space and then push them. And if they can't move, they take 1 damage, but otherwise they get moved out of the way. And then the Fire Sprite is every other creature gets +1 attack. And the fire creatures gain the ability, the movement ability. They can move straight for 3 spaces. Yeah, they can move in a straight line 3 spaces, and if they pass through any creature when they do so, then that creature will take 1 damage. So yeah, it's fun little things that just apply the entire game, and each player will have a different one. Now, in terms of my plan for this game and how big this game is, I currently have planned about 12 factions. And what that means, because there are 21 cards technically, but I'll just say 20 for now. There are 20 cards in each faction. That means that the totality of the game is going to be 240 cards. Wait, is that right? Hold on, actually, hold on. I got this calculation wrong the other day, so I'm just making sure. 12 times 20, yeah, 240 cards. Or because I'm kind of separating these into 3 different types of factions. Oh, wait. That's the wrong calculation. No, it's not. Yeah, so each group of factions is going to have 86 cards. There's some other stuff that I need to kind of figure out. But yeah, that's the basic idea of how many cards are going to be in the game. It's quite a few. But the other thing, and this is the last thing that I kind of want to talk about and explain about this game, is how deck building works. So in a normal, and by the way, this is definitely based off of trading card games. And this is my kind of take on a trading card game. In normal trading card games, the way that you build your deck is that you take the individual cards that you want, and maybe they're a part of an element or a faction or whatever that kind of synchronize together quite well, or a type of creature or whatever, and you put them all together in a deck, and then they create kind of this interesting like thing where they work together and in a very interesting way and stuff. That is not so in this game. You may have noticed that I've talked about, like, oh, it's the rarity of the card or whatever, and you might just be thinking, well, why don't I just put all of the good cards in there? That's because you can't. In the game, what you do is that you choose 3 factions, and then those 3 factions are the cards that you use. You cannot choose what cards in those factions will be in your deck, because you will have all of them. You choose what factions to put into your deck, and then you'll take all of those cards and put it in, making it so that everybody has the same amount of cards, the same amount of factions, the same amount of like power difference between cards, as well as rarity. So like, and there's a bunch of other factions that I have already planned out. I'm just gonna find the area where I have them listed somewhere. Oh, come on, where are you? I think I put it somewhere else. 1 second. Oop, that's opening up there. Okay, so like the various factions that I have are as follows. We have water, earth, fire, air, light, dark, space, time, swamp, desert, jungle, and thunder. Now I know I listed those off just all at once or whatever, but yeah, so those are all the different cards that I have, or all the different factions that I have planned. And they'll, like, I'm still kind of making some cards for them, but fire, water, and earth, and technically space, I think, is all done, more or less. There are some things I need to change about them, but they're basically done. It's going to be a while before I have all of the ideas for all the creatures completed and like assigned, and it's going to be a while longer before I have cards created for each of them. Thankfully, I have this very handy program called Card Creator, which is how I made the cards you see here. It's a very handy program that basically says, hey, we'll make a blueprint of everything, and then all the all that you need to do is just change the values in them. So for instance, I always have it so that right here is where the title of the card is, and then I just need to change what the text says. And then underneath is the description or the ability of the card, and I'll just change that. The various numbers, even the image itself can be changed. But the format of each of the cards always stays the same. It's true for the back of the card too. In this case over here, where I can say like, okay, I want 2 on this, 2 on this, 3 on this, 1 star on that, 1 star on that, so on and so forth. And it's just a really handy and easy program to use, and it's basically been a huge lifesaver for me, because I could make all of these cards in Photoshop or whatever, but I don't want to do that for every single one. That's gonna take forever. But this program lets me do it very, very easily. Even if it's just for, like, it works very well for prototypes. That's what I'll say. Works very well for prototypes. But yeah, so with that being said, this is the part of the stream where I announce that I need playtesters. Yes, so I had mentioned how there are certain parts of the game that aren't finished yet. That is still true. And I won't have these done for at least a couple weeks. However, with that being said, once I have these all completed, and like all like the rules finalized and everything just good and done, that for one, that's when I'll make the tutorial video, to be like, hey, here's how you play the game. It'll probably be an unlisted video that I just send to people who want to be playtesters. But yeah, but regardless, I need playtesters for this game, because it's the one resource that I have not had when creating this. I have been able to play this with maybe 2 people. And that's not to say that the game is bad because of it. I've been able to playtest on my own, just playing against myself. But it takes so much longer to do, and I don't get a varied opinion. I don't get a lot of varied opinions when I do that. So this is a call out to everybody, everywhere, or whatever. I need playtesters for this game. If you would like to playtest this game, first off, you will need Tabletop Simulator. I cannot buy it for you because I am broke. But it is fairly cheap. I believe it's $20 or less or something. It's a very cheap game. In addition to playtesting this, they have a bunch of like actual really popular board games that you can play with just random people online or with your friends online or whatever. The controls are a little difficult to understand at first, but after you play the tutorial and mess around with a couple of things, it's actually fairly easy to understand. I mean, most of the time, especially for this game, it is just drag, drop, flip, rotate, and that's pretty much it. Oh no, you may have to pick up the entire deck and put it on. You might have to shuffle the deck, which is just shake the cards. You may have to move around the camera a bit, but that's also, whatever. That's easy. But yeah, so it's not hard. It just has a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, so get Tabletop Simulator, DM me or email me at StrawberryGamesDev@gmail, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And yeah. And also, of course, when I officially publish this game, which I do plan on doing at some point in the far future, if you are a playtester, I will put you in like the credits section of the game, where like wherever I would put the playtester section. So yeah, probably like a special thanks or something. I don't know. I mean, heck, I'm the one that decides, so I'll probably put a section on playtesters alone. But yeah, so that is Elemental's The Living Stones. I mean, as I've mentioned already, this is something that's been in the works for quite some time. I'm I'm very proud of it, and it's still got a long ways to go before it is completely finished, even in a state of being able to be published, or even to work towards publishing, for that matter. I mean, for Pete's sake, I do not have any art for these cards. All of the art is a single picture of a Hydra. So I also need to hire somebody to do the art for me, or at least find a style that's very simple and iterative. And because of how many cards I'm going to have, it's going to take a lot to do that. And yeah, there's a lot that can go into this game, or that's going to go into it. And yes, eventually I will do a Kickstarter. The problem with doing a Kickstarter, though, is most of the time, in order for your game to be successful, the game has to be completed first. Kickstarter, like, as much as it is a game of, hey, help me create this thing, more often than not, the Kickstarter games that do well are the Kickstarter games that are already complete. And the only reason they need money is actually to publish it and to send it out to people and stuff like that. And it's kind of a shop that's like, hey, get in early on this cool new thing kind of thing. And it's very good for that. And it's very cool that you can do that. But for people like me who need a platform where I'm like, hey, I have this really cool idea. Could you guys support me in this or whatever? It's not a very good platform for that. So while I do want to have a Kickstarter for it eventually, the game basically needs to be done first, which is an unfortunate thing. But yeah, so with that being said, that is going to be the end of the stream today. As I had mentioned, I have some other stuff that I need to do, and I also have a very busy week ahead of me. But I wanted to stream something, and I thought, hey, this is the perfect time to kind of show this off. So with that being said, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate anybody who came in and watched for a while. You will see more of this in the future, of course, and I'm very excited to continue to show it in the future. I do have other projects that I'm doing, and there's going to be some cool stuff in the future. Trust me. I have some very interesting things planned for you guys. There's actually something on my desk that I'm looking at that I'm like, oh man, if only they knew what I could see. But yeah, some cool stuff is coming up. Just it takes some time for me to actually do things because of everything else that I have to do in my life. So with that being said, yeah, I'll see you guys around. Bye.